Climate engineering is killing the Earth and humanity. An estimated 50 million tons of toxic material have been spread around the Earth already. A judge orders Trump to pay SNAP benefits in full. Russia captures Pokrovsk. That and more coming up next. Hi everyone, it's Friday, November 7th, 2025. Thanks for joining me for Alternative News, where I cover some of the top stories of the week, mostly ignored by the mainstream media. But before we get started, a quick 30-second commercial from my sponsor. Dubby Clean Energy Drink Mix. Lots of different flavors, including a hydration blend with electrolytes. Whether you're working an overnight shift or driving long distance, no matter what the situation is, Dubby will keep you alert and awake. Dubby energy drinks are made in the USA, FDA approved, and contain no sugar, no maltodextrin, no artificial colors or dyes, and is gluten-free. Visit the website for more flavors and products. Order Dubby Energy Drink Mix online by using the video or description link and enter code UFO1 for 10% off. A judge ordered Trump to pay SNAP benefits in full.
Today, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to pay the full SNAP benefits for November. In response to another court order, the administration announced earlier this week that it would partially fund the program. But during today's hearing, the judge said the administration had not acted quickly enough to release the funds. The USDA must now tap into the contingency fund to make the full payments to states, which the judge said must be done by Friday.
And so Trump did pay the money. He's crying in his diaper for an appeal, but he did pay that money that the judge ordered him to pay. You can see on the screen there, they're at the National Monument, which is not far from the White House. I've been over there. And they've got Trump in that diaper blimp. Pretty exciting to look at, I think. You can see one of those toys. I'd like to get one of those actually myself. This is only a few more seconds and this will be over. I like showing that though. Next, climate engineering is killing the Earth and humanity. An estimated 50 million tons of toxic material have been spread around the Earth.
Wigington Online.
Thank you to everyone on the panel and for the hearing of this issue. To start with, I want to obliterate the condensation trail narrative. We at Geoengineering we are the largest organization in the world on this subject. We're the only organization that has taken a National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration flying lab to altitude, top scientists in it, all on film, all on the record, to sample what heavy aircraft were emitting from nozzles, not a byproduct of jet exhaust, but from nozzles. We processed that at one of the world's most recognized testing institutions, and we found exactly what we knew we would find: climate engineering elements starting with aluminum nanoparticles. Aluminum nanoparticles, bioavailable aluminum, is toxic to all life, period, no exceptions. It is sterilizing soil microbiome. It is affecting root systems. And again, this is testing done with agencies like the USDA and biologists in California. And in our film, The Dimming, we have U.S. Air Force generals, 2 of them acknowledging these operations, former Canadian Minister of Defense acknowledging these operations. Most important of all, we have up close film footage of these aircraft at altitude, KC-10s, KC-135, C-17 Globemasters, nozzles visible, turning dispersions on and off. We have up-close photographs of retrofit commercial aircraft, and I'm not implicating commercial pilots or personnel. These systems are automated, but we have up-close photographs, retrofit nozzles mounted on wing pylons aimed at the exhaust jet stream to make this look like, quote, condensation. When we see a researcher in Antarctica with temperatures 40 or 50 below, with their breath condensing, do clouds start to form above their head? That is a blatant, glaring lie. Again, film footage proves this is a sprayed dispersion, not, quote, condensation. We did about 500 lab tests with the University of Minnesota, an internationally recognized agricultural institution. And with those 500 lab tests over that state, we extrapolated how much material was in that precipitation and projected that globally to determine approximately how much is being dispersed and disguised around the globe on an annual basis. It's something in the range of 40 to 60 million tons. And here's my point. There's a very vast difference between localized, publicized cloud seeding operations and climate engineering. It's comparing an ant to an elephant, and many have gone to great length to try to blur this clear distinction. And the cloud seeding operations, even at smaller scale, are still a very big negative. Anytime you affect the natural cycles, if you do cause something to precipitate in one location, it didn't get where it was going. That's very clear. So when you have people upstream from Wyoming cloud seeding, like Idaho or Washington, and if they were able to cause precipitation, it wouldn't get to Wyoming, obviously. But the overlying massive, exponentially more massive climate engineering Manhattan project, which is geoengineering, is negating any other effect from any other source. And this is well recognized. We have the entire global climate science community stating their urgent desire to put aircraft in the air, spray payload dispersions. These are patented processes, by the way. All that is available. Patents are atmospheric testing, testimony from scientists, U.S. Air Force military personnel, former government scientists. By the way, there's a federal gag order right now on all National Weather Service and NOAA employees. Why would you gag the weathermen if you didn't have something very big to hide? But all this data is in the geoengineeringwatch.org documentary, The Dimming. We are non-political. We don't sell anything. Our mission is to expose this issue. My background is with Bechtel Power Corporation, largest engineering firm in the world. My home was on the cover of the world's largest renewable energy magazine. I have solar, wind, and hydro, and that's what brought me into this issue. When I finished this project in Northern California, in the wilderness of Northern California, I was losing 60, 70, 80% of my solar PV uptake, my solar panel uptake on some days because of what these aircraft were emitting, and I knew that couldn't be condensation. I began to test my precipitation to see if I found climate engineering elements in it. I hoped I would not. I knew it would change the course of my life if I did. I found it there, aluminum nanoparticles specifically. From an initial rain test of 7 parts per billion over 18 months, I had a single rain event with 3,450 parts per billion of aluminum nanoparticles, and aluminum is named specifically in climate engineering patents for solar radiation management. This is literally toxic rain. There's a great effort, and why so many from academia are so invested in denying what irrefutable data proves, film footage proves, military officials acknowledge. Why so many academicians are invested in denying this issue is mind-numbing. The entire global climate science community, again, is urgently calling for solar radiation management to be deployed. It has been for 80 years already. We have U.S. Senate documents at geoengineeringwatch.org, 800 pages long, outlining the scope and scale of these programs going back as far as 1978. In that document, it calls for intergovernmental cooperation, even between, quote, otherwise adversarial nations, and for blanket legal immunity for anyone and everyone involved. I never, ever wanted to be involved in this battle, but if we have an issue of this magnitude, how are we to not engage in this and expect anything we care about, from the environment to the water we drink, the food we eat? How can we not engage in this? And as far as the current administration, or any other for that matter, they are in a roundabout way continuing to perpetuate the official denial of this is just, quote, jet exhaust and not a sprayed dispersion. And in regard to atmospheric conditions, they are changing very rapidly. In fact, the region where aircraft fly is warming very rapidly, making it even less conducive for a, quote, condensation trail. At geoengineeringwatch.org, we've had 2 former military pilots that fly private jet aircraft with very important people have contacted us. Their planes were forced into emergency auto descent because the air around that plane was about 45 degrees higher than it should have been. The air was not dense enough to carry that aircraft. So again, the bottom line is these programs are a covert global climate engineering Manhattan operation, solar radiation management, the stated purpose to put light scattering particles into the atmosphere to slow down some of the sun's incoming thermal energy without consideration of the consequences of doing so. And again, we have many in the climate science community getting closer to acknowledging these operations, but to do so is a very bad career decision, and we know that. And in regard to the toxicity, there's synergistic toxicity. When you combine these elements, they become exponentially more toxic. And we've had, in the case of fish, which is a concern in Wyoming, we've had California top biologists, we have his emails in our possession, contact the geoengineeringwatch.org because of the endangered Delta smelt fish in the Sacramento River Delta, and they were finding aluminum nanoparticles adhered to the gills of the smelt. And every time he tried to bring that to light, he had a boot put over his neck. Fish and Game in Northern California, top biologist, personal friend, bringing up the fact that there were the sediments behind the dams and the streams packed with bioavailable aluminum, boot over her neck. So again, and I'll go to questions now, but we're the largest research firm in the world in this issue. We've conducted hundreds and hundreds of tests all over the country. We've worked with academicians around the country, major institutions around the country. And this denial of this climate engineering elephant in the sky is mind-numbing. It will come out sooner than later. And again, our only purpose is to point out that this is absolutely the single most destructive, we would describe it as the single most destructive human activity so far, short of nuclear cataclysm. And again, the ramifications cannot be overstated.
In a moment, Dane Wigington is going to answer a couple of questions. I'm going to leave, I'm not going to play all of it, but I am going to leave links in the description for all of this stuff so you can check it out in its entirety if you want to. Including, I'll leave a link for the documentary, The Dimming, that he was talking about, which is subtitled Exposing the Global Climate Engineering Cover-Up. So you guys can check out the description for those links if you want. And I'll just play a little bit more there with Dane Wigington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, Mr. Wigginton, you said 60 million tons of chemical is being dispersed?
Based on our testing with University of Minnesota, about 500 lab tests in total. And we're talking about aluminum, barium, strontium, manganese, polymer fibers, surfactants, graphene. If you've ever seen foaming rain, there's surfactants in our rain, and that is part of the climate engineering mix to keep the particles from coagulating together, which increases their descent times. So all these elements in this testing with UC Minnesota, 500 tests in total. And again, the total figure of 40 to 60 million tons, not coincidentally, matches what the world's most recognized climate engineers state as their objective to disperse globally, 40 to 60 million tons of nanoparticles as part of solar radiation management operations.
My question, Mr. Chairman, is what company produces that? That's a lot of material.
It is, and we have peer-reviewed publication, peer-reviewed science study published implicating coal fly ash because of the chemical signature in coal fly ash as a base material for these operations. And that's where so much material can come from with other elements added. Again, that's peer-reviewed, published science study. American Elements Corporation appears to be one of the material suppliers for the added elements because we have very different constituents being found. For example, when we have a January 21st of this year snowstorm in New Orleans, Gulf Coast, and Florida, while it was above freezing and raining on the same day in Alaska, Greenland, Iceland, and Siberia, that flash snowstorm is not a natural event. These are patented processes. It's called chemical ice nucleation for weather modification. Anyone in this room that searches Chinese government create artificial snowstorm will find everybody covered it. Popular Science, CNN, MSNBC, The Guardian. But if you bring that up here, suddenly everybody denies it, especially in academia here. Why they're so invested in denying these operations is obvious. It's a bad career decision to do otherwise. But this is mainstream global coverage of operations that are happening here in the US, but we're not allowed to talk about it here in the US. So again, in regard to the bulk material, peer-reviewed, published science study that coal fly ash, because many of the constituents in that, although they're toxic, are conducive to climate engineering operations as long as you don't consider the consequences of doing so. So peer-reviewed science study, again, proving that that is a base material.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Wigginton? Okay, seeing none. Okay, Senator Pearson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Winnington, for getting on and testifying with us today. My question for you is, I have noticed over the years the droughts in Wyoming. I have noticed our sagebrush dying. People not being able to get normal growth on crops that they have, or even in fields that had good grass at one time. And now those fields are turning into foxtail, wiregrass, thistles. I mean, and we can spray all we want, but do you think that this change in soil and this change in growth and these plants that have always been very prevalent in Wyoming that are dying, and you can see them dying, do you think that this could be a result of what is being sprayed over our skies? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I don't think, I know. We know this from absolute science testing, countless precipitation testing. So when we have toxic rain, specifically with bioavailable aluminum particulates in that rain, aluminum doesn't exist in free form in the environment, by the way. It's always bonded to other elements. If you find free form aluminum, it's been mined, refined, and distributed. Again, that's a primary element named in climate engineering patents. So we have peer-reviewed science study to prove that this bioavailable aluminum affects root systems on everything, causes them to shut down nutrient uptake. They die a slow, protracted death. It's also altering soil pH values. We know this in Northern California from extensive testing working directly with the USDA, that so much toxic rain has fallen here in Northern California. We have normally acidic soils, and I have the USDA historical baselines in my possession from a contact at USDA. Our normally acidic soils of 5.4, 5.5 are now 6.5, 6.6. That's an escalation of 10 plus times toward alkaline, and that is a direct result of the toxic rain. In the West, we're losing all of our predominant forest tree, the Douglas fir tree. The die-off is so horrific here in the West. It's not just the beetles. Beetles are a symptom of a sick, dead, dying tree. We have altered soil pH value. We have altered hydrological cycle, because climate engineering, and anybody who searches this, geoengineering will affect rain cycles. It is well acknowledged this will be the case. They're just not acknowledging that these programs have long since been operational. So when you combine the disruption of the hydrological cycle, toxic rain that's killing soil microbiome, affecting root systems, and geoengineering is also destroying the ozone layer. That is very, very critical. It's not getting better. We're metering this with a former NASA contract engineer with state-of-the-art equipment. We're getting UVC in the surface. That affects crops and flora as well. So but when you combine all these elements, you have, again, toxic soil, affected root systems, and because of these desiccant particles that not only disrupt the hydrological cycle, it affects atmospheric RH, relative humidity. So you have a condition called VPD, vapor pressure deficit, and that's not being acknowledged by the science community. That means when you alter that atmospheric chemistry, flora from crops to forests shut their stomata, their respiratory ports. That's how they breathe. That's how they absorb carbon. That's how they feed. That's how they release oxygen. And that is not happening. And so again, climate engineering has thrown a massive wrench into the planet's natural cycles. and the elements that allow flora to grow, allow crops to grow, trees to grow. This is a massive elephant in the equation. So the long answer to your question is there's zero doubt that climate engineering is the single biggest factor affecting all of these equations, and we have the whole of the so-called climate science community pretending it isn't happening. And I'll leave it with this. I had a NOAA scientist state to my face, we all know this is happening. We have no First Amendment protection. Again, there's a federal gag order on National Weather Service and NOAA. We don't know what to do. That was her statement to me, face to face.
These programs are operating under the guise of solar radiation management, but they're actually they're actually causing solar radiation by destroying the ozone. Dane Wigington was getting into that and explaining that there. I am going to check out the documentary, The Dimming. You can see the promo for it there in the background. And you know, Dane Wigington, he wants this information to be shared and spread. So please share it. You can go to his channel and you can share the information. He does welcome that. He's not going to come after you for showing it on your channel. Or and also, if you do like this news, please recommend it, like it. I'm trying to get at least, this is a new program, and I'm trying to get at least 50 views or so per episode, so that the show's not canceled in 2026.
The Ukrainian army released drone footage Wednesday showing soldiers raising the Ukrainian flag at the Pokrovsk City Hall, describing it as part of ongoing efforts to reclaim occupied territory. The Ukrainians and Russians are fighting fierce house-to-house battles over the strategic eastern Ukrainian city, which Moscow says it has surrounded. Kiev denies that, but defending Ukrainian forces said this week that more soldiers were needed to prevent the Russians infiltrating further.
They accumulated assault groups. They are seeping through our infantry positions because, as I said before, there is a critical shortage of infantry.
Home to 60,000 people before the war, Pokrovsk is now a largely deserted wasteland, devastated by around 18 months of fighting. Russian forces have been slowly encircling it, threatening supply lines for the Ukrainian army.
I won't say that the Russians occupy any part of Pokrovsk. I will say that they have accumulated forces here and there, but one can't say that they completely control a certain street or district.
So far it's difficult. Not critical yet, but it's difficult. It will be more difficult if there is a greater accumulation of Russian military personnel and if it drags on into the winter.
Capturing Pokrovsk would also give Russia a platform to drive north towards the two biggest remaining Ukrainian-controlled cities in Donetsk, Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, in its bid to take the whole Donbas region, which Russia claims to have annexed.
Now, that was from Monday, and Ukraine barely had a few soldiers left on Monday. That actually might have been from over the weekend. I'm not sure. It might have been recorded over the weekend, but that video was from Monday. And you know, you heard the guy there. He said that they had no infantry left. So you know, you saw them there waving a flag on Monday in that video from Monday, crying for help, the Ukrainians there. And now today it's been confirmed that Russia has taken over Pokrovsk during the course of this week. As you heard the Ukrainian guy there, he basically was admitting on Monday that they were out of infantry. And basically, it was described as a mop-up job by the powerful and robust Russian forces. the people who reported it described it as a mop-up job. So now Russia does have Pokrovsk, and I don't know what the problem is with my mic this episode. I apologize if there's any problems with it during the playback. I do have a new wireless mic I'm going to try next week. Have a good night, everyone.